Revolutions Per Minute is a weekly radio show from the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, recorded live at WBAI 99.5 in Brooklyn every Tuesday at 5. RPM is about doing the work to build a democratic socialist future. Every week, hear the latest news, analysis, and organizing experience from the minds and hearts of activists fighting every day in NYC. Join the movement at socialists.nyc.
You're listening to Revolutions Per Minute on WBAI, a socialist radio show and podcast from members of New York City Democratic Socialists of America. I'm your host, Desiree Joy Frias, and I use she, her pronouns. Today's episode is about what daily life is like in the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. Even though for most of us, DSA is not a paying job, we still pour hours and hours into working group meetings, canvassing, organizing calls, and direct actions. What drives us to spend our free time bringing socialism to New York City? But first, the headlines.
Yo, it's good, New York. This is Jack Devine with Revolution Per Minute's headlines, brought to you by The Thorn. As we discussed in our Green New Deal Earth Day special yesterday, the New York City Council passed the Climate Mobilization Act on Thursday, which will keep the city in line with emissions reductions targets set up in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. It will reduce the city's overall emissions by 40% by 2030. This is a result of years of incredible grassroots organizing and an encouraging step forward in the fight for eco-socialism. And a victory for local immigrant justice activists, the New York State Office of Court Administration announced that it would not allow ICE to make arrests in courts without judicial warrants, reversing their position after years of sustained pressure from advocates. However, ICE agents can still make warrantless arrests outside the courts. The struggle continues. Cuomo's planned slowdown of the L train is set to begin this Friday, but many questions still surround the project concerning safety, contract approval, and changes to bus routes. Workers at 7 key food locations across Brooklyn and Long Island have been locked out since April 6th after management canceled contract negotiations. In other grocery labor organizing news, the union representing the 31,000 striking Stop and Shop workers declared victory Sunday after it reached a tentative agreement with management to increase wages and preserve employee benefits that were under threat. In a statement, the United Food and Commercial Workers declared, "Today is a powerful victory for the 31,000 hardworking men and women of Stop and Shop who courageously stood up to fight for what all New Englanders want: good jobs, affordable health care, a better wage, and to be treated right by the company they made a success. Solidarity with workers and everyone organizing for a more just society. A better world is possible." Now back to Desiree and our live discussion on life in DSA.
Our headlines were brought to you by The Thorn, a free weekly newsletter to your email inbox by the New York City DSA Electoral Working Group, covering local politics and radical activism. Subscribe at thethorn.nyc. Welcome to our episode on life in DSA. My name is Desiree Joy Frias again, and I'm on the organizing committee for the Bronx Upper Manhattan branch. I've been a member of DSA for about a year now, and it honestly has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, for both my social life and my activist life. In organizational analysis, DSA is considered a third space. So that's a community that you choose to be a part of. It's not your job, which for the most part you might be required to do, or your family, which you don't always pick. It's the communities that you include in your daily life. So religious groups, volunteer projects. So since DSA is not our job and it's not our family, we kind of have to be mindful about how we work together since we don't have HR or other family members to remediate issues between us. I think that the biggest thing DSA has to do to change organizationally, to last another 100 years, we have to start treating each other better. But we're lucky that people in DSA are open to having these hard conversations. And we also have tools put into place to help us work together, like the Grievance Committee, which mediates issues between comrades. So today we're asking, how can we use DSA as a tool to uplift our comrades in our communities? Here in the studio to discuss life in DSA is Annie Levin, she, her, a member of the Central Brooklyn branch, and a rehearsal coordinator with the Sing in Solidarity chorus. Annie also coordinated Voices for Immigrant Justice, which was a left-wing unity concert featuring the chorus and 16 other coalition members. Concert proceeds went to members of the Central American Migrant Caravans through New Sanctuary Coalition. So thank you for joining us, Annie.
Thank you for having us.
So we also have a new member of DSA, John Feintuch. Him, a member of Central Brooklyn branch, and on the organizing committee for Sing in Solidarity. Previously, Josh founded and directed another activist choir called Grassroots Harmony and was actively involved in the Green Party for a long time, including serving as chair of Green Party in Brooklyn. So thanks for joining us, Josh.
Glad to be here.
So since you're both members of the DSA Sing in Solidarity choir, tell me what drew you to this particular group.
Well, I found out about the chorus, that there was a chorus that was getting started up by our comrade Dana Steer and some other folks. This was about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, at the Women's March, when a whole bunch of people were wanted to sing, and we all realized that we were so atomized by capitalism that none of us knew all of the same words. And I found out through that conversation somebody was starting a chorus, and I went to one of the first rehearsals, and I was immediately hooked.
What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I got to know a lot of the DSA people I know now, volunteering on Jabari Brisport's campaign in my district in 2017. And I had separately been, I started this activist choir, Grassroots Harmony, which was a small, spirited group. And I heard about Sing in Solidarity. I came to a rehearsal, and I was kind of blown away as like this big group with tons of energy, with a lot of people kind of doing organizing work. And I was really excited about it. And I think the biggest challenge for me was I always had wanted to make a group that was sort of less centralized than just like me, the director, deciding things. And this was a group that was off to a great start, and they were looking for more music leaders and more people to get involved. And it was just a great fit.
And Annie, tell me a little bit about how a chorus usually works. So the music director, is he in charge of everybody? What is a typical structure like?
Well, one thing I think that is a little bit different about the chorus as opposed to a lot of other DSA groups is how horizontal and participatory it is. There's not a lot of a rehearsal that you are a spectator for. And we do have a couple music directors, including Josh Feintuch here, but there is a shared responsibility. We always try to have a few song leaders to begin rehearsals, plus music directors. And I think as we grow and change and people develop their skills, chorus members become song leaders, maybe eventually become music directors. So we are building as we grow our membership.
And Josh, tell me a little bit about direct actions that the Sing in Solidarity choir does.
Yeah, so we've so it's interesting. Sing in Solidarity does a number of different types of events. So we did our first actual concert in December, which Annie was deeply involved in making happen. It was fantastic. We put together a lot of different musicians and artists. We also will show up to actions and lead songs there, and sometimes that means leading a very simple song that everyone in the crowd can pick up quickly. We recently kind of joined a counter protest against an anti-abortion protest in an abortion clinic, and kind of brought some thematic songs and changed some lyrics of songs to fit with that, and it's been well received so far.
And Annie, as an activist, what does music mean to you? What role does music have in building a socialist future?
Well, speaking as an activist and speaking just as a person, when I was first interested in getting into DSA and trying to find out which working groups to participate in, I was really on the lookout for a cultural organization, because that is where my interests tend, and there wasn't one until I found out about the chorus. And I think that as a cultural organization, it can build a community because everybody gets to participate, as well as solidarity, friendship, comradeliness, and I think we live under capitalism. We live in these individualist silos. We are very, very atomized, and learning a lot of these songs gives us a sense to kind of share a cultural heritage. There's over 150 years of socialist history at this point, and there's a lot of music that goes along with that.
What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think even for me, who's now been doing activist music for 6 or 7 years, I'm learning a ton every day. I think we have the benefit of one of the musical leaders in the group, Ben Bath, who has a huge wealth of knowledge and can come kind of pull immense histories of tons of music off the top of his head. And I've learned a ton from that, and I think it's just kind of cool seeing. And then different people come to the group from different musical traditions. So I have like a lot more of like the traditional choral training and like American folk music. Ben brings like a lot of international music. There's someone who wants to kind of do some more pop song arrangements. I think that's like exciting to have like those different approaches.
Yeah, and I think what's great about music is, first of all, you feel good. You feel good when you listen to music, when you listen to live music, when you make music with other people. That's a very healing, self-care kind of activity. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, too, is what Annie mentioned, that we are building a shared storytelling community, a shared history with everyone who, going back, who was saying Solidarity Forever, in their own meetings, and now we're singing it today or listening to it when we start these episodes. So I think that that's like a powerful moment to connect with the past.
Yeah.
And what are some of your favorite songs? What are your favorite activist lefty songs?
There are so many. I think we've been doing a bunch of songs from the Spanish Civil War. Viva la Quince Brigada, where there's a very famous Pete Seeger recording of it from decades ago. And we sing a couple of songs that we may be playing on the air today, Song of the United Front, and songs from the sort of German cabaret tradition from the Weimar era, from the 1920s in Germany. There was a very exciting musical time.
For you, Josh?
I try to not be jaded about even like I think that like Solidarity Forever is like brilliant lyrics. Like just like the first time I heard them, I was blown away, and like I don't know, it hasn't gotten old for me yet.
No, I mean same thing when we sang Solidarity Forever at the DSA convention. I'd only been DSA for like a few months, and I was at the convention, and we all like stood together in a circle and sang Solidarity Forever, and I was like, these people are not messing around.
The one of the lyrics to Bread and Roses, I feel like, is a really good. I mean, Bread and Roses in general is a song that is a nice song and also is a good metaphor for like what we're talking about. And there's like this line that's hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. The idea that like fighting for your basic needs isn't actually enough, that we should fight to be happy.
I heard that song for the very first time at my first DSA chorus rehearsal, and I think it was like that moment, like hearing that lyric, when my heart just soared, and I thought, okay, I need to make this institution last.
Yeah, and especially in New York City, where like we have so many choices of what to do with our free time. We have so many. You don't have to be. This isn't the only socialist organization. There are so many others. There's so many choices, and like. What makes
but only one course.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, people tend to devalue these cultural like aspects of our organizing. They're like, oh, it's not as important as canvassing. It's not as important as electoral politics. And I'm like, it's actually, all those things are very important to preserving like the history of what we're going through.
To me, there's like a metaphor there with like the environmental movement. So it's very easy if you're doing environmental activism to fall into like the mental cycle of I have to do everything I possibly can to reduce my impact, and I can't, have this indulgence because it'll increase my carbon footprint. And then sometimes I tell myself, if I do this lifestyle thing that will like make me like a happier and better taken care of person, like maybe it'll have like, this tiny fraction of % increase in my footprint, but I'll also be a more effective activist.
Yeah.
The chorus can do the same thing.
And I'm glad that chorus brought both of you to us because, you guys are cool and you make the organization better. Well, you're listening to Revolution Per Minute on listener-sponsored WBAI in New York City, broadcasting at 99.5 FM and streaming on your favorite podcast app. To connect with us after the show, you can email us at revolutionsnyc@gmail.com or sign up for our newsletter to get links to what we talk about on the show. Our website is revolutionsperminute.simplecast.com. You can also find us on Twitter at NYCRPM. This is Desiree, and I'm here with Annie and Josh talking about life in the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. So our next big topic is a lot of the people who are listening have never heard of Democratic Socialists of America or what a chapter or a branch is. So for each of you, what is life like as a member of DSA?
It's busy. Very, 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 very busy. I think there's. I remember I used to have free time, in which I think I occasionally got bored even, despite the existence of the internet. And now, now that this doesn't exist unless I make it happen. And but it's also been, I think, a lot more, just joyous and more meaningful. My life has become more meaningful since joining DSA. And I think there's, but in addition to the joy and the meaningfulness, there is also, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of labor, and that labor can be occasionally, alienating and create a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety that on top of the stresses that come with our lives under capitalism can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah, and sometimes we kind of forget to say thank you to our comrades.
Yes.
I mean, we do that at work. We do that in our families. Like, I think that's one of the most undervalued, statements or phrases. But, just saying thank you to people who are serving you food or who are, working alongside you or helping you move. People in DSA just, do nice things for each other all the time. And, I don't think we're thankful enough all the time. But what about you, Josh? What's life like as a member of DSA?
Sure. So I actually only officially joined in December, and I've been sort of outside of the course. I've been sort of slow to take on any other added responsibilities.
But you haven't run away yet, so we're pretty happy about that.
No, I'm very much enjoying it. And I'm enjoying taking it slow. I think I'm learning from my experience that when I started getting involved in the Green Party, I ran into taking on a lot of roles very quickly, and I think that probably wasn't the best for my long-term involvement. So I'm trying to be more self-aware about that. But no, I'm really excited about DSA. I'm really excited about the electoral wins because I really like electoral campaigns. I have found one thing I've noticed is that when I show up to DSA events, there have been some times where it's been awesome and I've been really welcome and I've had a really easy time talking to everybody. And there have been some events where I found it a little bit harder to break in socially, where maybe there were cliques or it was just so big that it was hard to know who to talk to at first if I didn't know a lot of people already. I think that's a minor complaint, and overall I'm really excited to be in DSA.
No, I think we have a right to complain. We're spending our free time with these people. I think it's okay to be I totally agree with you. Sometimes I'll go to I'm nervous to go to a social mixer or an event because I'm oh, what if I don't know anyone there, and then who am I going to talk to? Interacting is hard.
I think a lot of DSA groups have very, very good intentions, but often some poor communication. And I think, for instance, I think we always go to a bar and have sort of a social after our bi-monthly rehearsals. Mm-hmm. And I think it had been just sort of a core group of organizers who went out, and I think eventually we started saying, okay, well, we should really tell people that we're all going to go to a bar together after rehearsal, because even though everybody was welcome, people actually have to open the door for people and show them that that they are welcome, that they will be you can come out with us and talk to us, and we're not going to reject you, which I think that we have a tendency to think that outside groups and cliques aren't going to let us in.
Yeah, we all have a valid fear of rejection if you have that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having it. And I think that what's really good about DSA is we have a mobilizer, and in some branches it's called the Rosebud program. DSA is really big into metaphors. And so this mobilizer program is to connect new members with people who have been around for a while. And all you have to do is go to coffee with them, or I don't know, go to a museum or something, and just talk to them and be hey, what's going on in your life? What are you interested in organizing around? Kind of help get people plugged in, because it's a huge organization. You go to these branch meetings and there's 120 people there, and it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
But what are some of the times that you've gone to a DSA event and felt really welcome? What can people do more of?
To be honest, the first example that comes to mind is chorus. And the first time I came to a chorus rehearsal, and I very much got that, and I did fortunately go out to the bar afterwards, and I felt I was part of the group already. I also had a lot of really good experiences working on Jabari's campaign. There was a really good group there, and I guess that was a little bit different because I kind of went in having volunteered from when he was first announcing, and it was only a handful of people until the time right before election day when he had dozens of people in the office every moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of working groups that have a need to have its members, feet on the ground, actually doing something like electoral field team, for instance, getting canvassers out, or chorus, getting singers out to events. I think that we structurally have. We have to be more open. We have to be more of the sort of union rank and file organizing tendencies in order to simply to function.
Yeah, texting people, phone banking, all of those like toolbox tools. Well, and I guess more broadly, like our free time is limited, especially in a busy city like New York. So what makes you spend hours organizing with DSA? Like what has you coming back week after week, even though you're exhausted and have no free time?
I would say that at the beginning it was just curiosity, and then a love of socialism, a kind of a broadening class consciousness. But what kept me in was a feeling of responsibility towards my comrades, and which was strengthened by the relationships that I have developed within DSA, which have pretty much been. There have been many of them, and they have, mostly been very, very good. And it has been, it has strengthened my social life, and it has, made me feel closer to people, and that closeness has, driven, tied me to DSA.
Yeah, I'll relate it back to my experience being actively involved in the Green Party, and I think that was a lot of what kept me involved for so long, even as. The party had some like setbacks in terms of like electoral campaigns, but I really loved a lot of the people that I worked with, and I wanted to keep working with them, and I think that's at a certain level like that keeps you going.
We were talking outside in the hall a little bit about like campaigns and things that DSA is doing. Like, what is one thing you think that DSA is going to win? Is there anything that's really like any campaigns or any projects that are going on that really energize you?
It's like such a big question to answer. I'm wrap my head around that.
So
yeah.
I personally, we were talking about Tiffany Caban.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so stoked about her. I definitely think that, she's gotten our DSA endorsement. People are canvassing for her in Queens, from all over, and she's running for DA, and I think she's gonna win, because DSA is great.
Yeah. No, from what I've read about that, and I haven't been attending for events yet, but I need to. But that sounds exciting. I'm sort of like having in my head, I'm thinking like maybe a little too far ahead, but I'm imagining there being like a whole DSA caucus in like the U.S. Congress and in the City Council and everything, and like like passing like putting social legislation to the floor and things like that.
Oh, I'm so ready. I'm so ready. What about you, Annie?
Yeah, I'm very excited by a lot of what the electoral groups have been doing, and the fact that we put a state senator in the New York State House, the first socialist in, what was it, 100 years, or if there had ever been a socialist.
Yeah,
and,
I'm pretty sure.
And
ever.
I think just having that kind of those successes behind us really, it makes me feel really good. And then it also gives me
it's like a little bit of an ego boost.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, the people that I work with did these cool things,
Absolutely. And then it also gives me a lot of armor for, sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner with conservative relatives, and we can say, look, or more likely liberal relatives, look at what we did. Look at what we did. This is possible. A different kind of future is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I was just with with my in-laws, my lovely in-laws, and their friends for Easter weekend, and we were talking about migration and like really high-level political topics. But you gotta radicalize your friends and your family. You gotta get everyone on board.
Yeah, I genuinely believe that the state of political discourse in this country is actually getting better, even though from the state of Twitter, obviously it seems like it's getting much worse.
Twitter is not actual discourse. I think we can all agree with that.
Except at the level of presidential policy, in which case it apparently is.
And those are completely valid and being stored somewhere in the Library of Congress. So we're going to jump into a song by the DSA Singing Solidarity Chorus. It's called El Pueblo Unido.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Quiere cantar que vamos a tumbar, a más allá, banderas de unidad.
You're listening to Revolutions Per Minute on listener-sponsored WBAI in New York City, broadcasting at 99.5 FM and streaming on your favorite podcast app. To connect with us after the show, you can email us at revolutionsnyc@gmail.com or sign up for our newsletter to get links to what we talk about on the show. Our website is revolutionsperminute.simplecast.com. You can also find us on Twitter at NYCRPM. This is Desiree, and I'm here with Annie and Josh talking about life in DSA. So we've made a lot of complaints, filed a lot of complaints about DSA. Sorry about that. And I guess my next question is, like, what's the most fun you've ever had in DSA? So yes, things are hard and a lot of work, but what's the most fun you've ever had?
Well, I have to say my mind immediately goes to a concert that the chorus performed, and this is actually not the concert itself, which was a memorial for Heather Heyer, but afterwards, the chorus, which we were all there, and we were just kind of standing in a circle after the memorial, and we were, we had a guitar, and there were, it was a very warm and loving atmosphere, and then we just started to sing, just very spontaneously, and we sounded good, and then people from all over the room, this was at Mayday Space, came over and joined us and started singing with us, and we sang the Internationale, and a comrade who was there who was not in the chorus just joined in, singing in a different language, and I think we did this for like an hour or two, and it was, I think, not only the most fun I've had in DSA, but probably the most fun I've had.
What about you, Josh?
Yeah. I missed that one. I'm sorry I missed that. I also point to a chorus event we sang a few months ago at an event called the Radical Potluck, hosted by the People's Puppets of Occupy Wall Street. And the chorus came up and did a couple songs there, and there were also a number of other activist performing groups that did bits, and it was a potluck and a mingling event, a really lovely event. And it was just like it felt like almost like a reunion of activists that I've like met over like the last 5 or 6 years, from like the climate march art bills in 2014, when I was like first toying with the idea of starting this activist chorus, the last one I had, and like newer people and sort of like, hey, here's what everybody's up to now, and that was just like a way of like saying like, hey, all these people that like you run into in the past, like we haven't all given up, like we're all still like learning and doing things.
Yeah, and I mean, I love going to direct actions and protests and marches. I actually get like really revived by going to those. The housing march last Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, was really, really nice, and it was huge. There was like probably 1,000 people that filled the entire Abyssinian Baptist Church. And it's like energizing to be around all these people who are fighting the same fight. But I'm also going to cheat and say a second one, and it was my wedding day, because I had an entire table of DSA members. Nice. And they were the most raucous and, like the most fun people at my wedding.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. So that was a lot of fun. But, how can we use DSA as an organization, it's a tool, it's a framework. So how can we use DSA to uplift our comrades and our communities?
You want to start?
Well, I think I can only speak to what I'm doing in my DSA life, and how making music has that uplifting is an uplifting tool for our comrades and our communities, and I think it does that by at least in part keeping people in their bodies. I think that a lot of socialism, a lot of political education tends to be kind of, we are in our heads a lot of the time, and
a lot of reading groups, a lot of
reading
education,
which is good, which also fills a need, but we need heart starved too, and
I need more picnics. We have a Red Sprouts picnic coming up, I think on May 16th, and I'm going to need at least 2 more picnics this summer.
Yeah, many picnics, many beach days, many sing-alongs.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Josh?
I'll just sort of like build on what Annie said, and I think like the interpersonal camaraderie and feeling like I feel like if going on and taking on like capitalism or a corporate state or et cetera, as like a general concept, if you're not used to doing that, feels really scary. And I feel like if you have a lot of people that are doing it together, it feels a lot less scary. It's the the same idea of a union. It's just like the idea that you're part of a group that is going in a direction instead of that you are trying to lift these enormous thing on your shoulders.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the best parts about DSA, that you don't have to solve capitalism by yourself. You have at least 100 other people in your branch who are all going through similar things in your same neighborhood, and it feels really good to know that, not to know that your comrades are having a hard time, but to feel oh, we all have bad landlords, we all have hard jobs or whatever, and we can kind of help each other through this together.
I think also socialism, it has the ability to turn you from a passive spectator in your life, and I think capitalism does that. It turns us all into passive spectators, whether we're looking at a screen or doing what our boss tells us to do, getting crammed into a subway car at 8 o'clock in the morning, and with very, very narrow path ahead, very few choices to make. And socialism opens up a whole new space in which we can decide a lot of things for ourselves, and we can do that together.
Can I throw out one more metaphor?
Yeah,
I know that we're a metaphor crowd now.
And a caucus. We make so many caucuses. Maybe too many caucuses.
A metaphor and caucus crowd. A single person singing, for many people, that's an extremely intimidating thing. A lot of people, I would argue incorrectly, think that they're tone deaf. Or they're just really scared about singing in public. And the idea of having 10 other people singing a part with you, maybe, or you'll even sing in 4-part harmony that way. And so that's literal, but it's also a metaphor for organizing.
Yeah. So earlier we listened to El Pueblo Unido, the people united will never be defeated. Now we're going to play the Song of the United Front. The lyrics are by Bertolt Brecht, the great socialist poet and playwright who wrote the libretto of the Threepenny Opera. Oh, I know that, including the song Mac the Knife, which was made famous by Frank Sinatra. The music is by Hans Eisler and the Austrian composer, and Socialists blacklisted by the House Committee on Un-American Activities. So these are all pretty radical people. But let's just listen to the song.
Arrangement by Josh Feintuch.
And a shout out to everyone in the audience here who has put their bodies on the line to fight fascism in our time, in our town, and we sing this in honor of these struggles. So this is Song of the United Front, has a great chorus, so join in.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her. Drum links 2, 3, drum links 2, 3, wo dein Platz Genoss ist. Reih dich ein in den Arbeitereinheitsfront, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist. Just because we're human. We do not want a pistol to our heads. We want no servants under us and no bosses overhead.
So left, 2, 3, so left, 2, 3, to the work that we must do. March on in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too.
And just because we're workers, the job is ours and ours alone. The liberation of the working class is the job of the workers alone. So left, 2, 3, so left, 2, 3, to the work that we must do. March on in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too. So left, 2, 3, so left, 2, 3, to the work that we must do. March on in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too. So left, 2, 3, so left, 2, 3, to the work that we must do. March on in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too.
So in a little while, we're going to open the lines. We're going to have people call in, and the phone number to call us is 212-209-2877. Again, that phone number is 212-209-2877. And call in. The question for this time is, what kind of cultural activities would make you join us in DSA? Should we have a softball team? Should we have a basketball team? I don't know. I don't play sports. Do any of us play sports?
I do not.
Oh, I'm not sure, but you know, what do you want to see in DSA? So in the meantime, while we're waiting for you guys to call in, I wanted to touch a little bit on accessibility. So my degree is actually in disability rights. So I'm very passionate about accessibility and ensuring that people with chronic illness and disabilities are able to participate fully in our organization. Because, you know, it's not a job, it's not our family, it's a third space, and we kind of have the power to make it as accommodating or as unaccommodating as we choose. So what I did was I put together some suggestions from the New York City DSA Disability Rights Caucus. They had put out a document on what people can do in activist circles to make meetings or gatherings more accessible. So their first point is time and location. So varying what time you meet, where you meet, making sure that you talk about what subway's nearby, give people the address, and so that they can arrange transportation. And parents and people with chronic illness can have a hard time making evening meetings. So we should try to have some on the weekends too. Use a microphone. So microphones don't just amplify voice; they make those amplifications more clear. So it's not actually good for you to be like, oh, I don't need a microphone, I'm very loud. It's actually better for you to use the microphone, especially for our friends with hearing loss. And the third point was childcare. So we have an organization called Red Sprouts. They're a socialist childcare collective here in New York City DSA. And a group of DSA members had a full-day training, and now they are considered gardeners in the Red Sprouts program. And we send pairs of gardeners to working group meetings and branch meetings and all kinds of events so that people can have their children taken care of while they participate in politics and, activism. This is the same thing that, churches do. During church services, they have childcare so that, their parents can participate. So that's been a lot of fun to be a part of. What about you guys? What makes it easier or we have a call? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to switch over to the call. You're live.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, it would be I think what would make an excellent activity is have a radical walking tour.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Because I've participated in a few. I haven't done it in many years, but there was a gentleman, I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name is Bruce Caton, Katon. He used to organize radical tours, I think, in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know what he's done since then, but I think it would make an excellent idea.
Yeah, they don't do walking tours as much as they used to. And you can actually do community walking tours and radical history walking tours. New York City has an illustrious history of radical stuff.
I would go on one of those.
Yeah, and
I'm actually
and also it would help to raise money too. People could make a contribution.
Yeah.
I'm actually a walking tour guide. That's one of my jobs that I actually managed to get through a DSA comrade who's also a walking tour guide and a historian. And I think that this is definitely something that can and should happen.
I'll start the Google Doc, Annie. I'm sorry. Someone else can set up the Signal chat. Yeah, so I think that's a great idea. I think that it's important to read a lot and do reading groups. It's important to do political education. But it's also really impactful to walk where other radical people walked and see what they saw. I'm thinking about this year is the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. And you can visit Stonewall the Stonewall bar on Christopher Street and, see where LGBTQ history occurred. So I think it's powerful.
Yeah, I think one of my tours is of the Lower East Side, the Jewish Lower East Side, and I try and take my, which is also where the chorus meets at the Henry Street Settlement, 466 Grand Street, and I was surprised that by how many of my comrades didn't know the history behind the Forward Building, which is this beautiful Beaux-Arts building from the early 20th century that has a bust of Marx right on the front of it, right on its facade, and I would love to share some of that history.
Yeah, and Josh, what about you? What are you looking forward to this summer with DSA? It's your first summer, so I guess we should be helping you know what choices you have.
Yes, and I look forward to that. I'm looking. Hopefully, the course is going to be planning actually a concert. We're kind of going back and forth about dates, possibly in July. TBD. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to maybe volunteering on some campaigns.
Do either of you have plans for May Day, which is coming up on May 1st? May Day is a holiday that some activist circles celebrate to kind of recognize the worker and the worker's struggle. Right? Is that an accurate description of May Day?
Yeah, it's the socialist holiday, and the chorus will be out in force. I think there's still some decisions to make about where exactly we will be out in force. But we will be singing in the street wearing red.
I mean, that's the thing with New York City. I'm sure that there's 100 different rallies and protests. So you kind of have to be picky on May Day.
Yeah, it's like trying to decide, among your friends which Christmas parties you're going to go to this season.
Yeah, but the weather should be really nice. I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah.
And Annie, you were mentioning earlier that we go to the beach in the summer.
Yeah.
We go down to the Rockaway Beach. I didn't get to go last summer. I'm pretty bummed, but I definitely want to go this year. So, definitely a trip to Coney Island, see the sideshow and ride the roller coaster and all that stuff. I don't know.
DSA trip, DSA contingent at the Mermaid Parade.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But so what does DSA do differently that other activist organizations that you have been a part of don't do? Is that a weird question?
No, I think I have some trouble answering that question because I was not in an activist organization prior to DSA in any substantial way. But I think one thing that I just from what I have observed, being in activism for the last couple of years is that I think DSA doesn't present, at least for many people, a lot of barriers to entry. It can, once you're inside, it can be hard to find your way into various sort of cliques and working groups and so on. But you can find something, you can show up and
Just
you can
show
join
up.
in. Yeah, just show up.
You can go to socialist.nyc/calendar. There is so many choices, multiple choices on almost every day of the week, and there's lots of options, and you just show up.
Yeah. So, for instance, I think a lot of choruses and labor choruses in particular, you have to audition, and there's only auditions once a year, and you have to have a certain skill set, and you have to.
That's so stressful.
It's
for a volunteer chorus.
And
that
all
doesn't pay you.
Most of the choruses I've sung in, I've had to pay to be in, actually.
Yeah.
And I had to audition and
Wait, what?
Yes. This is common in hobbyist level courses. You pay an annual dues, maybe up to $100 a year.
You pay them.
Yes.
To sing with them.
Correct.
For free.
Mm-hmm.
And DSA chorus, you literally show up, sit down, start singing. We hand you some music, you open your mouth.
And you don't have to show up every week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, we meet twice a month.
Yeah, but we also we have people that come once in a while. We'd love to have you as often as you can come, but we also do try and make it a thing where people, it's a very casual commitment level, and you can just show up to a rehearsal and see if you like it and want to come back.
Yeah, we would like you to make it less of a casual commitment level, but we're happy to meet you where you are.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people get so stressed out about, having to be the perfect activist or the perfect socialist, and do everything, fix all the problems. But people are working on things. Even though things are on fire, people are working to put it out. And if you show up, I hope you will be welcomed by whatever working group or branch you choose to join us at. And again, that address is socialist.nyc/calendar. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, and there's always events that you can find through those social media groups. So we're into our action section of the episode, where we're going to talk about, I have three things that you can do this week to kind of, bring socialism to New York City. So how new organizers can get involved with DSA culture and community. Number one, attend your local branch meeting. Annie or Josh, have either of you guys been to your branch meeting?
Yes, I've been to Central Brooklyn a few times now.
What about you, Annie?
Yeah, I'm a Central Brooklyn member, and I also just joined the Mobilizers.
So what makes you go to branch meetings? What do you guys like about it?
I think, similar to my previous answers, my friends. I think, branch meetings have, I think it depends very much on the branch. People do a lot of different things. Central Brooklyn is very, very big, and there's a lot of energy and, sometimes singing. And it can be, an interesting, energizing space where it can be very easy to plug into things, including the chorus.
And almost every DSA meeting is a potluck. So if you just show up with food, there will also be other food for you to eat. And I'm really lucky because I'm in the Bronx Upper Manhattan branch, and we have an organizer named Bev who's on the organizing committee who bakes her own bread and cake, and it's so good. And she brings it to every branch meeting.
I have to go up there sometime.
Yeah, you're gonna have to come visit. We're meeting next Tuesday at St. Paul's Lutheran Evangelical Church in Parkchester at 7:00. But what about you? What makes you come to branch meetings?
I'll be honest, I think that this is a good thing to realize that not everybody's like this, but for me, going to meetings is actually a very familiar, comfortable, and I actually enjoy going to meetings and talking about business. I am a huge nerd, but I know that there's others in the DSA like that.
Parliamentary procedure.
Just a few others. Just a few.
Yes, and I think it is good to recognize that going to meetings is not everybody's preferred form of engagement. And
yeah, of course, you're not required to go. They're just fun.
But I like the idea of getting everyone together and talking about things.
Yeah, and what are these branch meetings we're talking about? There are meetings that you attend in the community in which you live or work. So there are several geographic branches: Bronx, Upper Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, Queens, North Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn, Southern Brooklyn. So you have 3 choices in Brooklyn. And our newest branch, which is Staten Island. And we also have a labor branch for those of you that are part of the union movement or are interested in unionizing your workplace. The labor branch does not meet on the same day as the other branch meetings usually, so you can be both in the labor branch and a geographic branch. And these all meet once a month and then have events specific to their branch in between. So to learn more, go to socialist.nyc/branches. Join the chorus on Thursday, April 25th at Abrams Art Center, 466 Grand Street on the Lower East Side from 6:45 to 9:15. And May Day is on May 1st. Let's celebrate the working class together. While we're all under relentless attack from capitalism, landlords, and our bosses, the least we can do is, be kind to each other.
Solidarity.
Solidarity.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. This is great.
Thank you, Desiree.
Thanks for having us.